My name is Elena Mercer, 34 years old. I've always believed in being the glue that holds my family together. After my divorce, that belief only deepened. I thought if I could just plan something perfect, something joyful, I could patch the cracks that had formed between us. That's why I spent months meticulously organizing a family trip to Hawaii. Flights, hotel reservations at the Moana Surf Ritter, excursions, even little surprises for mom and dad. I booked it all myself. Each click of the mouse felt like reclaiming a piece of my life that had felt hollow after Matthew walked out. I covered everything with my card, rationalizing it as an investment in healing, not just for me, but for us. I'd always been the one handling the finances, covering Dad's pension shortfalls, Mom's bills, and even Lauren's spontaneous splurges. I didn't complain. I thought of it as love, responsibility, family. Then the first lie hit. Mom called last week, her voice careful, almost fragile. Alina, honey, we're going to have to postpone the trip. Things are tight right now. Dad echoed it later, low and hesitant. I swallowed the disappointment, nodded, and accepted it. Families hit bumps. I thought I understood the reason. They really couldn't afford it. My chest tightened, but I pushed the feeling down. I was a fixer, not a complainer. 3 days later, my phone betrayed me. Instagram stories from Lauren flooded my screen. There they were, Mom, Dad, and Lauren, sun-drenched and laughing in Hawaii, her little dog in a ridiculous Hawaiian shirt, cocktails in hand. My stomach turned. Not a single message, no word, no apology. They had lied. They had stolen my plans, my money, and my trust. I grabbed my laptop, my fingers trembling as I opened the travel wallet linked to my personal card. And there it was, the evidence, glaring and undeniable. A private catamaran tour under Lauren's name, dinners at upscale restaurants, spa sessions, even yoga classes on the beach. Every charge screamed betrayal, each dollar spent on indulgences that I couldn't afford while they treated themselves like royalty. I didn't call, didn't text, I just stared. My heart raced, a mix of fury, disbelief, and heartbreak. How could they be so careless, so cruel? The people I trusted most had turned my generosity into their playground, while leaving me in Portland, alone and unsuspecting. I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths, letting the shock settle, and then a strange calm took over. This wasn't just anger anymore, it was a plan forming. I wasn't going to react out of emotion. I was going to act strategically and make sure they felt the weight of their choices. I navigated to the account settings and froze their access to my card. Every luxurious indulgence they thought they owned disappeared in a single click. Then I canceled the hotel payments I had authorized for their suites. The confirmation emails pinged in one by one, payment declined. I imagined them standing there in the Hawaii lobby, the first hints of panic flashing across their faces. Satisfaction flickered, sharp and cold. Their messages started coming immediately. Dad's text in all caps. Alina, what did you do? Everything is declined. Mom's followed, manipulative and layered. You're being so selfish. We just wanted a break. And Lauren, casually entitled, typed, You're making us look ridiculous. Fix this. I didn't reply. I let it hang in the silence. The quiet felt good, like a small victory, but I knew this was just the beginning. The betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined. My family hadn't just taken a trip. They had spun a story, painted me as the villain, and weaponized my own money against me. And as the screen glowed in the dim light of my apartment, I realized something chilling. The real damage hadn't yet revealed itself. The lies, the manipulation, the exploitation, they were just the surface. What I would uncover next was going to show me just how deep the betrayal really went. The morning after I froze their accounts, my phone remained suspiciously silent. The sting of Dad's panicked texts and Mom's guilt-laden messages lingered, but I felt an odd clarity. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was alert, ready to uncover everything they thought they could hide. Then Monica, my cousin, and the one family member who had always been brutally honest, pinged me on WhatsApp. Her message was short, almost urgent. Alina, you need to see this. Attached were screenshots from the family group chat I had muted months ago. Normally, I wouldn't care. Mom's recipe links, Dad's fishing photos, Lauren's selfies, but these messages made my stomach twist. The conversation painted me as unstable, jealous, dramatic. Mom had written, Elena's acting out because she's jealous of Lauren. She needs help. Jealous. They were twisting my outrage into a character flaw, a flaw I hadn't even acknowledged in myself. Dad chimed in. She just needs to get over herself. We only wanted a break. And Lauren, as if the insult alone wasn't enough, added, She's just mad because I'm living my best life. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Matthew's name popped up next. My ex-husband, the one who had walked away a year ago. He had known about the chat and added his judgment. Always dramatic. Let her cool off. My heart clenched. Betrayal compounded betrayal. Not only had my family stolen from me, but they had conspired to turn me into the villain of their story, painting my legitimate anger and hurt as instability. The people I had trusted most in my life were twisting my pain into a weapon against me. I scrolled further, each message a knife twisting deeper. Mom even wrote, Elena needs help. Linda says she's not thinking straight. They were talking about me like I wasn't even in the room, like my life and emotions were something to control and manipulate. I didn't cry. I didn't text back. I did something better. I opened my banking portal, checking for any other accounts that might have been compromised. And there it was, 2 joint accounts I had set up years ago to help cover family expenses. One for cell phone bills, one for car insurance, both still under my name. Enough was enough. I removed my card from autopay, transferred the responsibility to Dad, and called the insurance company to update the policyholder. I was cutting the strings, reclaiming control of my life one step at a time. Even as I did this, Monica kept me updated. Lauren's been bragging about new clothes and parties paid with your card, she wrote. Each update fueled my resolve. This wasn't just about money. It was about exposing the truth and reclaiming my identity from people who had weaponized it against me. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long while. Power. Not the power to punish, but the power to protect myself, to dismantle the narrative they had built around me, and to prepare for what I knew was coming next. Because if they thought freezing accounts and canceling payments would stop me, they were wrong. The betrayal had run deep, but I was deeper. I knew the confrontation was coming, the one where I'd look them in the eyes and show them exactly how far their lies had spread, and I wasn't going to flinch. I hadn't spoken to Mom, Dad, or Lauren since freezing their access to my accounts. The silence had been strange at first, almost peaceful, but now it was electric, heavy with the knowledge of what they had done. I knew it was time. I drove 20 minutes from my Portland apartment to their house, the familiar streets twisting past me like memories I had tried to bury. Every turn reminded me of birthdays, family dinners, and Sunday roasts, the same ones where laughter had been real and fake all at once. The driveway looked the same, but nothing inside would be. I took a deep breath and stepped into their home. Mom was humming softly, arranging plates in the dining room as if the past week hadn't happened. Dad was slicing a roast, his eyes avoiding mine, and Lauren lounged at the table, phone in hand, barely glancing up. I set my bag down and took a seat. Mom tried to start with small talk, mentioning her book club. I cut her off sharply. Let's talk about Hawaii. The room froze. Lauren's phone slid to the table. Dad's knife paused mid-cut. They knew this wasn't going to be a casual chat. You told me money was tight, that we couldn't afford the trip. I trusted you canceled my plans while you were living it up in Hawaii, charging thousands to my card. And then I find out you've been spreading lies, telling everyone I'm falling apart, jealous of Lauren's happiness, I said, letting each word land. Mom's lips tightened, but she stayed quiet. Lauren rolled her eyes. You're making a big deal out of nothing. It was just a vacation, she said, with that familiar smirk. I leaned forward. Nothing? You spent thousands of my dollars. Spa treatments, boat tours, fancy dinners, while I sat home thinking we were all broke. And you call me dramatic? Dad's voice tried to cut in, rough and defensive. Elena, settle down. We just needed a break. I shook my head. A break? Using my money without telling me is not a break. It's theft. You lied and then you painted me as the villain. That's not a family. I'm done carrying you. Mom's voice softened, dripping with manipulation. Elena, we didn't ask you to come because you've been fragile since your divorce. Fragile. Cheap shots twisting my pain into justification for their betrayal. I fixed my gaze on her. You don't get to decide what I'm ready for. You don't get to use my money, lie to me, and then tell everyone I'm the one who's broken. Lauren tossed her hair back. You're overreacting. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you didn't care who you hurt, I said, standing up. I'm done. No more phone bills, no more insurance, no more covering for Lauren's reckless spending. I'm done. Mom reached out, her tone pleading. Elena, don't do this. We're family. I shook my head slowly. Family doesn't betray. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't paint me as unstable for standing up to your lies. I grabbed my bag and walked out, leaving their silence echoing behind me. Outside, the air was crisp, the autumn leaves swirling at my feet. For the first time, the quiet felt like freedom. But the sting of their betrayal lingered. I knew this wasn't the end. This confrontation had revealed cracks in their defense, but what came next would expose the full depth of their deceit. A week later, my phone buzzed. It was Monica. Her words were short, chilling. Elena, it's worse than you think. Call me. My stomach twisted as I dialed. Monica's voice trembled, tense and cautious. They used your name. Not just for the trip, but for loans. Lauren and Mom have been taking out credit in your name. Loans. I felt the floor shift beneath me. Unauthorized loans in my name. Hidden. Carried out behind my back. My life had been hacked by the people I trusted most. That night, I sat at my desk, opening my laptop, hands shaking, as I pulled up my credit report. There they were. 3 unauthorized loans, totaling tens of thousands, all linked to my name. The first, 8 months ago, $12,000. The second, 4 months ago, $18,000. The third, a gut-wrenching $30,000, co-signed by Mom herself. My credit, my life, had been weaponized against me. I closed the laptop feeling a cold, sharp clarity. This wasn't just about Hawaii. This was about control, greed, and the people who claimed to love me, using me as their ATM. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to fight back, and in a way they would never forget. Elena sat at her desk, staring at her laptop screen as if it held the answers to a puzzle that had been sabotaged from the start. Each line of the credit report burned into her mind. Unauthorized loans, maxed out credit cards, unexplained charges, all tied to her name. Her family, the people she had trusted above all, had been siphoning her life away in secret. She exhaled slowly, letting the shock and rage settle into a cold, focused clarity. This wasn't just betrayal, it was identity theft, and it had to stop. She picked up her phone and called the bank fraud hotline. Her voice was steady, icy, professional, a far cry from the Elena who had cried silently into her pillow months ago. She explained the situation, attached Monica's screenshots, and demanded every account in her name be frozen. The agent confirmed the lock and promised an investigation. But Elena knew that stopping them here wouldn't be enough. Next came the lawyer, someone she'd trusted during her divorce. Elena emailed her the credit reports, the screenshots of the family chat, and a timeline of every transaction. The lawyer's response was immediate. A legal letter to the bank and the authorities demanding a full probe into the identity theft. Elena reviewed every word, her hands shaking but determined. The letter was precise, airtight. Her name was hers, and she was taking it back. By the next morning, Elena felt a flicker of satisfaction. Her family would soon feel the weight of the chaos they'd orchestrated, but she knew patience was key. Their reckoning had to be deliberate, controlled, undeniable. She began methodically severing the ties that bound her financially to them. Phone accounts were transferred to her parents' names, insurance payments removed from her authorization, auto payments canceled. Every dollar they thought they had access to was now out of reach. She imagined their faces when the first bills arrived, when the phone lines went dead, when the first collection notices hit, just a taste of the panic she had endured. Then came the monitoring of social media and online activity. Monica kept sending updates. Lauren flaunting a new designer bag as if the debt didn't exist. Mom posting vague, hard times updates. Dad bragging about a weekend fishing trip he clearly couldn't afford. Elena's pulse quickened with a mixture of disbelief and satisfaction. Their lies, their facade of control, were unraveling faster than she could have planned. But it wasn't just about money anymore. The emotional betrayal cut deeper. Elena drafted another email, this time to her lawyer, detailing her next move. Legal action for identity theft, fraudulent loans, and emotional damages. She wanted to ensure that every deceitful step they had taken would be documented and addressed. They had treated her as a tool for years, and now the law would bear witness to the truth. As the days passed, Elena received small updates, collection agencies contacting her parents, overdue notices piling up for Lauren, phone lines disconnected for non-payment. Each notification was a reminder that justice, subtle but inevitable, was unfolding. She allowed herself a small, private smirk. Yet the quiet moments were when the impact hit hardest. Sitting in her apartment, looking around her modest space filled with independence, she realized just how much she had carried for others. Every bill, every favor, every financial crutch she had provided, all exploited. She vowed it would never happen again. Late one evening, a letter arrived. Handwritten, familiar handwriting. Mom. The words were soft, apologetic on the surface. Elena, we're sorry. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were just trying to keep the family together. She paused reading, letting the words settle. It wasn't an apology. It was another request for help. A thinly veiled plea for money. Elena's lips tightened. The power dynamic had shifted, and she wasn't falling for it. She tossed the letter in the trash without a second thought. By the end of the week, Elena sat back in her chair, looking at her reflection in the dark screen of her laptop. The woman staring back was stronger, sharper, and unafraid. The counterstrike had begun, and her family had no idea how far it would go. But the final layer of betrayal hadn't yet been revealed. Monica's next message hinted at a shocking discovery. Even the ex-husband, Matthew, had been complicit, silently observing, never warning her, letting the family scheme unfold while siding with them in whispers. Elena's mind raced. This was more than financial theft. It was a web of deceit, and she was only beginning to untangle it. With that realization, Elena's resolve solidified. She wasn't just reclaiming her finances. She was reclaiming her life, her story, her dignity. The reckoning would be complete, but the path ahead was a tightrope between justice and the emotional carnage left in the wake. The quiet in my apartment was almost deafening. For the first time in months, I could hear my own thoughts without the chaos of my family's demands or the sting of betrayal. But peace was short-lived. Monica's latest message flashed across my phone. Elena, you need to see this. It's worse than you think. My stomach sank. I opened the attached screenshots, my eyes widening as I scrolled. My parents hadn't just misused my money. They had been systematically building a shadow version of my life for Lauren. Credit cards, unauthorized loans, even secret lines of credit under my name. Every financial instrument I thought was mine had been manipulated to fund her lifestyle. And Matthew, the one person I thought might have my back after our divorce, had silently agreed, offering subtle nods of support to their schemes in private messages, never warning me. The weight of it hit me in layers. Not only had my family lied and stolen, but my ex-husband had effectively condoned it. The anger bubbled, but so did a strange sense of clarity. The truth was finally out, and I could act with precision. I spent the next hours compiling everything: bank statements, loan applications, screenshots, social media posts, every piece of evidence lined up like a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to the deception. I forwarded the dossier to my lawyer, adding a note that left no room for misunderstanding. This is not just about money. It's about manipulation, collusion, and long-term emotional abuse. I want every account frozen, every loan reversed, and the truth documented legally. That night, I sat in my living room, the glow of the laptop illuminating my face. I replayed moments in my mind, family dinners, where smiles masked deceit, phone calls where apologies were veiled demands, the casual way Lauren had bragged about purchases she never paid for. I realized how much I had overlooked, how much I had rationalized in the name of family. Then came an unexpected message from Lauren herself. Her tone was different this time, almost pleading. Elena, I don't know what happened. Mom and Dad told me you froze everything. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I could feel the power shift. For the first time, she was vulnerable, but the betrayal was deep. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned my attention to Matthew. His silence had hurt more than any action. I confronted him via a video call. His face flickered with unease as I laid out everything. The loans, the accounts, the messages. For the first time, I saw him hesitate, realizing the gravity of his complicity. I didn't know how to, he stammered. But words were empty. Inaction had already caused the damage. I ended the call without forgiveness. By the end of the week, the legal machinery was in motion. Accounts were frozen, loans were flagged for reversal, and investigators were beginning to untangle the web of deceit. My parents' desperation started to show in subtle ways: silent phone calls, vague text messages, even an awkward encounter in the grocery store. They were unaccustomed to being powerless. Through it all, I kept one thing clear. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it to reclaim myself. Every letter I wrote, every legal step I took, was a declaration that my identity, my finances, and my dignity belonged only to me. And then came the final revelation. Monica had been quietly investigating, speaking with former acquaintances, and checking online trails. She uncovered that the identity theft had gone deeper than we imagined. One of the loans had been taken out to cover a side business Lauren had started, a business my parents had invested in secretly, using my credit to fund it. It was the perfect storm of deception, greed, and complicity. The shock was immense, but it also fueled me. I realized that this story, my story, needed a closure that wasn't just legal, it needed emotional closure. I began planning a final confrontation, a moment where truth would hit not as an accusation, but as undeniable evidence of their choices. As I sat back in my chair, looking at the reports and screenshots, a strange calm settled over me. The betrayal had been vast, the deception long, but the reckoning was at hand. My next moves would determine not just my freedom, but the moral consequences for everyone who thought they could manipulate me without consequence. The air in my parents' house smelled faintly of roasted garlic and lavender, comforting on any other day, suffocating now with the weight of betrayal. I stepped through the front door, my heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor, a rhythm that seemed to echo the determination pounding in my chest. I wasn't here for reconciliation. I was here to expose the truth. Mom looked up from arranging flowers in a vase, her smile faltering slightly. Dad froze mid-step, holding a loaf of bread, the knife in his hand still. Lauren lounged on the couch, scrolling her phone, oblivious, or so she thought. The tension was immediate, palpable, like the calm before a storm. I placed my bag down deliberately, slow and deliberate, and opened it. Inside, files, screenshots, bank statements, loan applications, all neatly organized. I let them spill slightly onto the dining table, a silent announcement of what was coming. "I think it's time we talk," I began, voice steady, piercing through the heavy silence. Their expressions shifted. Confusion, irritation, the faint twitch of fear. I didn't soften. Everything. Every lie, every unauthorized charge, every loan taken out in my name. Mom's lips tightened. "Elena, we can explain." "Explain?" I cut in, my tone hard as steel. "You lied about the Hawaii trip. You spent thousands of my money on Lauren's indulgences. And you, Matthew," I turned sharply toward my ex-husband, who had awkwardly appeared at the doorway. "You knew about some of this, and you stayed silent." Lauren finally looked up, her smugness faltering. Her voice wavered slightly. "It's not that bad. I didn't ask for this." "You didn't ask?" I echoed, my eyes locking with hers. "You paraded around on my credit, your vacations, your designer clothes, your parties, and now you claim ignorance?" My hands shook slightly, not with fear, but with the intensity of long-suppressed anger. "Mom, Dad, you not only let this happen, you orchestrated it." Dad tried to speak, his voice low and defensive. "Elena, we were trying to help Lauren get a start." "Help!" I almost laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You used me. Every account in my name, every loan, every payment, without asking me. You told our family and friends that I was unstable, jealous, acting out, while covering for your scheme." Mom's eyes glistened, half tears, half calculation. We thought you'd understand, Elena. We were protecting you from..." "Protecting me?" I leaned forward, voice sharper than steel. "Protecting me from what? Knowing the truth? Knowing that I've been funding your lies and Lauren's lifestyle while being painted as the villain?" My gaze swept the room, landing finally on Matthew. "And you, sitting there like a bystander, complicit." The room was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Lauren's phone slipped from her hands, and she finally seemed small, vulnerable. Dad shifted uncomfortably, a bead of sweat tracing his temple. Mom looked as if she might speak, then thought better of it. I reached for the laptop in my bag, opened it, and projected the evidence onto the kitchen wall. The spreadsheets, the screenshots, the loan statements, all undeniable. "See this?" I said, letting my voice carry. "Every unauthorized transaction, every lie, every false story you spread to make me look like the bad one, every single thing is documented. And now the banks are investigating, the loans are flagged, and this will not just go away. Every choice you made, every deception has consequences." Matthew flinched, his face pale. Lauren covered her mouth, trembling. Mom's hands gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white. Dad looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I paused, letting the silence soak in. The truth hung in the air like smoke, suffocating, yet cleansing. "I am done," I said finally. "Done being your ATM, done being your scapegoat, done carrying your lies. From now on, my life is mine, and you will have to face what you've created." I stood up, slung my bag over my shoulder, and walked toward the door. The house was still, broken in a way that was satisfying. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had reclaimed my power, my identity, and my dignity. As I stepped out into the crisp evening air, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. The confrontation was over, the reckoning begun, and for the first time in years, I felt unshackled. My family's betrayal would not define me. Their consequences would. The days after that confrontation were surreal. Silence stretched over my phone like a heavy fog. No calls, no messages from Mom, Dad, or Lauren. It was both liberating and strange. Freedom never felt this quiet. For the first time in years, I could breathe without guilt gnawing at my ribs. I spent hours organizing my finances, making sure every account tied to my name was secure. I double-checked the loans, canceled lingering authorizations, and sent formal notices to the banks that any activity without my explicit consent was fraudulent. The legal steps were tedious, frustrating, but empowering. Every click, every call, every verified document felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been stolen. Monica became my anchor. She stayed in touch, offering support, sharing updates on the chaos I'd left behind. Lauren's debts were piling up. Mom and Dad struggled to keep their bills current without my money. Their world, once cushioned by my financial labor, was crumbling. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. Instead, I observed quietly, knowing that life has a way of balancing itself. And this time, justice was subtle but inevitable. I moved into a smaller apartment in downtown Portland, close enough to my work but far enough from the family drama. The place smelled faintly of lavender and fresh coffee, simple comforts that became symbols of my independence. I allowed myself small luxuries this time, something I'd always denied, always reserved for others. A soft rug for my living room, a vintage record player, a few carefully chosen plants. This was my life, curated entirely by me. Work became a refuge. I poured myself into projects, but not to escape. They were now about progress, about building my future rather than repairing others' mistakes. My evenings were quieter, calmer. I'd cook meals I actually liked, read books I wanted to read, and sometimes just sit by the window, watching the city glow as dusk settled. These moments of peace were new, intoxicating, and a little foreign. I had been so busy keeping everyone else afloat that I had almost forgotten how to live for myself. The change wasn't only practical, it was emotional. I began therapy, finally unpacking the years of manipulation, guilt, and misplaced responsibility. I learned that setting boundaries wasn't cruel, it was necessary. I discovered that forgiveness isn't always about reconciliation. Sometimes it's about freeing yourself from anger and moving forward. Each session left me a little lighter, a little stronger, a little more certain that I could define my life without their interference. Then came the final, symbolic act, changing my last name. I filed the paperwork to become Elena Parker, my grandmother's maiden name, a lineage untainted by my parents' betrayals. When I received the new ID, I held it in my hands, felt the embossed letters, and smiled. It wasn't just a name, it was a statement, a reclaiming of identity, a severing of the chains of obligation I'd carried for decades. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Bills were tight, Work was demanding, and the absence of family sometimes echoed like a hollow chamber in my heart. But every decision, every step was mine. No one could dictate my choices anymore. I felt strong in a way I hadn't realized I could feel. Months later, Monica sent a message. They're still trying to reach out, but it's too late. You're untouchable now. I read it with a small, satisfied smile. Their struggle didn't bring me joy, but it affirmed that my boundaries had teeth, and for the first time, my needs were as important as anyone else's. I began making plans, real plans for myself. A solo trip to Italy, a small art course I had always dreamed of, reconnecting with friends I had unintentionally neglected over the years. My life was no longer reactive, it was intentional. As I walked through the city streets one evening, feeling the crisp autumn air on my face, I realized that the hardest lessons were behind me. Family doesn't always mean loyalty. Love doesn't always mean sacrifice. And strength doesn't come from enduring abuse. It comes from standing up, walking away, and choosing yourself. I paused at a corner cafe, sipping my latte, watching people pass, each absorbed in their lives. I felt an unfamiliar calmness, a sense of being exactly where I needed to be. My past, tangled and painful, had shaped me, but it would no longer define me. I was Elena Parker, fully, fiercely, and unapologetically alive. And in that moment, I knew this was just the beginning.